Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome on this beautiful morning. I hope you have a mug or something to drink, or I suggest you pull up a chair, get comfy, sort of curl up on the couch, if you will. Have I got a show for you today? If this is your first time to catch my show live, or if you're even watching or listening via replay, or you've come across my show because someone said, "Hey, you need to listen to this crazy lady ramble for a few minutes." Um, Welcome. My name is Ronnie Harden by trade. I am an editor. I'm a content writer. I'm a writing coach. I help people like you share their story and look good while doing it. Yep. We work on crafting and polishing our words so that whatever content you're trying to share, it's the best stuff that you're going to put out there, right? And so if you've ever thought about writing a story or sharing a story, or maybe you thought about going beyond just the content that you share on social media, and you really want to have a thoughtful way of putting together an idea or a concept, maybe you have a brand, maybe you have a book, a story that you've actually written. Maybe it's a children's book. Maybe it's a self-help book for women or men going through something, overcoming something. Maybe you're a person of faith and you have a message or a cause that you would like to bring to the attention of others. We're sharing our stories, guys, every single day. And my job is to help you tell your best story and look good while doing it. Good morning. Good to see everybody on here. Thanks to all the folks that are watching live. I'm always impressed seeing the folks that jump in and say hello. Good morning. Good morning. It's good to see folks out on YouTube as well as the social media platforms. And let me tell you something. Good morning. Good morning to everyone. Pop it in the comments. It's good to see you there. Thanks for being here. It always makes the show fun when you've got folks interacting with you live. So if you are watching this live, or even if you're watching this via replay, please pop in the comments. Tell me hello. Tell me where you're joining from. I always love meeting all my friends and catching up with you after the show so that I can then answer your questions or interact with you that way. So thanks for being here. It is a somewhat nice and yet a little humid day here in Dallas, Texas. I've just come off of a wonderful conference, speaking of storytelling, right? Because we're going to get back to the basics today about some elements in storytelling and why telling our story in a way that is effective and helpful. Is it effective? Is it helpful? Right? I loved this book John Acuff wrote called Soundtracks. You know me, I'm always shamelessly plugging books that I read or am involved with. But this book was really great because it deals with the soundtracks that we play in our head when it comes to creating content, when it comes to dealing with others, when it comes to our jobs, when it comes to maybe being a parent. All of those soundtracks that we play in our head that almost sort of strip us from, oh, well, hi, Milo, strip us from the very things that we need to be able to do our jobs effectively, right? To share our stories effectively. Hi, Milo. Milo always knows when to show up in the show. And if you are just listening and you don't have the video ability, my cat Milo always manages to find his way in when doing a show. Do I edit him out or do I leave him there? I think it's fun to leave him here. Hi, Milo. What are you doing? You having a good morning? You've been out there chasing things and checking out the backyard, making sure everything is just exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now, I've been in this conference, like I said, so I, for the last 3 days, have been gone. Michael is also out of town. So Milo has been stuck here in the house by himself. He is super glad to have some humans back. But guys, I just came off of a fabulous conference. Podcast movement, one of my favorites. And you know, why do I go to these conferences? Why do I go to these conferences? Why would you go to a conference, right? Conferences are great sources for education and information and being up on the latest trends and things that are going on in your particular field, right? So, podcast movement is all about an outlet that is a form of storytelling, if you think about it, right? When I work with authors and I talk to them about their books, part of the job that I do is help them understand that their book is just an extension or a product, if you will, that they put out from their main source, right? Is it a company? Are you a consultant? Are you a business? Are you a teacher? Are you a writer? Right? Are you an author? Are you a podcaster? If so, you are sharing your stories in a unique way pertinent to your field. So I've known the gentleman who started this conference 9 years ago. Can't believe it's been 9 years already. And so I've been involved with the conference since the very early days. I've gone to every one except the last couple of years where I was going through cancer treatment. And also COVID happened and they had an online version. So I did it that way. But it was great to be back this year in person, saw a lot of my friends that I've made from other podcast movement conferences, but really great to hear from people like Mark Cuban, to hear from Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Audie Cornish from NPR fame, who's now on CNN, a panel of women producers from ABC News who have produced some really great narrative storytelling podcasts, because now podcasting has opened up a whole new area for narrative storytelling. It's kind of funny, back in the old days, speaking of old days, we're going to feature my mug of the day today. And it is my mug from my friend Elena. She gave me a mug that has an old radio on the front of it, right? And it says rock on. Radio, where families used to sit around the radio, right, and hear audio dramas being performed. It was one of the early ways that people were engaged in stories beyond just storytelling, beyond just someone reading a story to them, or having the ability to go see a play in live form, right? So now podcasting has opened up the field, and not just limited to the experts in the fields, but anyone can have a podcast, whether you're a hobbyist, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a writer or an editor like me. You can put yourself out there in this medium and share your story, right? So great stories always have a strong beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Even the sessions, guys, it was so full on. And for those of you that messaged me wanting to know, I think you got a little confused seeing my pictures. I wasn't actually living out of my car in the garage of the convention center that's attached to the hotel. I actually live about 12 minutes from downtown Dallas. So the conference was held in Dallas this year. So I had the ability to come home, and sort of de-stress and make some food and put together some special snacks and have my fruit tea. And I had two coolers in the back seat. So between sessions, I was running out to my car, getting snacks, eating a few grapes and a cube of cheese, because the sessions were just nonstop. This conference, and I don't know if you guys have attended conferences like this, because if you have, let me know. But this conference was like a fire hose of just great information. And the biggest problem you had is trying to decide, which session do I go to? I want to go to that one, but they're also doing one downstairs that I need to go to. 3 floors, guys. A full floor of expo with all of the latest tech gadgets that you could possibly need to create your podcast studio, services of things, helpful things like legally protecting your podcast, services that you wouldn't even know you need in a medium like this, right? So it was, You definitely enjoy this. Yeah, listen, Stephanie. So the conference next year is in Denver. So go ahead and make your plans now. Next August in Denver. I'm going to be there. I hope to see you there. Because again, how do we learn? How do we learn to create our own content? I mean, for me as an editor, why am I being almost 60 years old going to a conference where there's a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds running around, doing it better, sounding smarter, and actually running sessions that are showing me how to share stories and also how to help my clients share their stories and possibly think about podcasting as another element to their arsenal of sharing their stories, right? So, it was great to hear from all these people. It was great to hear because then it helps you as a content creator sort of look at the way that you are creating your content, the story that you are telling, and how you're sharing that with others. Because, guys, let me tell you, for a lot of these people that were doing these panels, they've been at this a very long time. Jordan Harbinger was there. He's another one. I've listened to his podcast a couple of times. He's funny. He's got a very popular show. He's been at this for 10 years. So I always even try to tell my authors that I work with when they're working on their first book, this is your first book. And I am so proud of you. You are now a published author. I love getting to tell my clients that you are now a published author, that we are going to work together to produce the very best work for this first effort. Because with every piece of content that you create, with every story that you are telling, with everything that you are writing, you are learning how to do it better. So hearing from these, I mean, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, for example, you probably have heard of his name. He is one of the doctors that was interviewed during the coronavirus epidemic. And so, in an atmosphere like this, you're able to hear personally. They're not on with ABC News, they're not on with CNN, they're not on with the big networks that are trying to ask them questions, about the spread of coronavirus. But he shared with the crowd that, they came to him and said, "Hey, can you have a podcast ready by Monday?" And he said, this was like Thursday. So he said, luckily I had a team, production teams available through the different news outlets but he said, I was at my house during the shutdown, with AirPods in or headphones in, recording my own content. And he had a podcast that they did every single day for 14 months. Imagine the content that is. Now, he said, because of all the interviews I've done with news outlets and things, there was a lot of content, but he said, but it was always changing. It was called the novel Coronavirus because they didn't know anything about it and they were learning and we were watching them. Now, of course, we all know just how devious um, and vitriolic social media and news outlets became over fighting to see. It became more of a shit show and trying to outdo each other rather than really think about getting information out to the public that is accurate, that is as truthful as they can present it, right? These are doctors, they don't have all the answers, but that, he said, um, you may not want to trust science, but if you can trust the scientific process, the method through which they test information to see if it is accurate or not. And they were trying to present us with the most accurate and up-to-date information during the coronavirus. So here we are 2 years later, all kind of stuff out there. So he said, I'm a brain surgeon. Like I do surgery on people's brains. And then I have to come home at the end of the day and pick up my 3 daughters from school and talk to them about their day. And this is after doing interviews also about the coronavirus. So he was able to really share with the audience what it was like to be, as someone who has a very large platform and yet was dealing with trying to present content that was truthful, that was accurate, that was the best that they knew at the moment to help the public navigate the coronavirus thing. So it was just really helpful because then it helps when you hear other people's experiences of what they're going through, how they're creating their content, what is working for them. Audie Cornish from NPR, when she was talking with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, it was one of the sessions I really drew a lot from, to hear them speak about um, the current state of storytelling. And, there's a difference between fiction and nonfiction in the written word, in the publishing world, and now even in the podcasting world, because now that we have narrative storytelling, you can have both, fictionalized and, you know, dramas that are done fictionalized as storytelling for entertainment. Then you have the whole element that is more of a journalistic stance, right? They are telling us stories that are going on, trying to get information out that helps the public. So here's the difference, because there was a little bit of a kerfluffle that happened on Thursday at Podcast Movement. Personally, I didn't think too much about it, because when I see people or come in contact with people whose ideology is different from mine, who I know have been hateful, misogynistic, you know, I don't agree with them. I don't like them. I don't want them near in my personal space, but I also their presence does not threaten me in any way unless they're followed by, 1,500 of their crazed lunatic followers. Then you've got a problem. But people like that, what kind of stories are they telling? What kind of content are they putting out there? Does their content help or harm? Depends on which side of the coin you fall on, right? So I love the guys that are the organizers of the podcast movement. I know their hearts. I know what they're trying to do. They've grown this event. When you grow an event like this and it becomes the largest conference in the industry, in this particular industry, you're going to have a lot of differing points of view and different people attending your event. Again, what I heard over and over and over at the conference when it comes to telling your story is, number one, that I try to get most of my authors to understand, and we do this even with being a B2B customer, and businesses, right? Small businesses. Know your audience. Who are your readers? Who's your audience? Who's listening to your voice? Who trusts your voice enough to listen to your voice, right? I have been I have a journalism background. I worked in radio for 8 years. I've dealt with customer service and dealing with clients in the communications field. Most of my work that I've ever done, even when I was a supervisor at the YMCA, was overseeing programs that helped smaller communities or communities of people, and also the messages or the stories that they are trying to tell. And so I know the heart of these guys. I know that they would never do anything to intentionally hurt or infringe upon conference attendees or sponsors or anything like that. But there was a little kerfluffle in that there was an organization represented at the podcast conference, whose ideology is in direct opposition to, I think, a lot of the people who were attending, who were sponsors, who were panelists. The agreement. So here's what happened. And again, I'm not. Listen. I'm over here in the corner looking good. My hair was doing okay. I was actually on my way to my car to get some more snacks between sessions when this happened. So I saw what happened, but I was like, ew, 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 and whatever. I'm going to my car, right? Because we have the ability to do that in this country. So, one of the exhibitors at the conference was the Daily Wire. If you're not familiar with the Daily Wire, it is a conservative media group, um, co-founded and formed by Ben Shapiro. If you know who Ben Shapiro is, and his voice in the podcasting space, in the political space, and you understand where he comes from. So there were others at the conference who, I think were surprised that he showed up. So the booth was there, and if you want to see how this happened, it's been if you're on LinkedIn or Twitter, you've probably seen this come up in your feed. But the organizers of Podcast Movement apologized to conference attendees and sponsors about, because Ben Shapiro showed up at the conference. He did not have a badge. He was not speaking. He showed up at the booth, took pictures with a few people, and left. I don't think the organizers knew about it. I'm not sure whether, the people at the booth knew about it and didn't tell folks, but they were only limited to having a booth. They were not represented on any panels. They were not allowed to speak. They were just there. So they were there, attendees who wanted to go speak to them or talk to them. So Ben Shapiro showed up Thursday. He's not a really tall guy. I didn't know that. He's probably, I don't know. He's he's not a large guy. So I was kind of surprised by that. And I don't really listen to his stuff, and I only know about him, but the only way I knew it was him is because when he was standing taking pictures with people, his picture on the backdrop of the part of the booth wall there was right behind him. So it was like, "Oh, look. Ew, 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 ew." And I went to my car, right? But there were a lot of people there, and part of the reason why I knew it was a kerfluffle was because I was trying to get to the escalator for my car, and there was all these people in an area that usually was just a walkway. They were kind of set up in the corner against the wall, by a walkway going to the garages. So I didn't think much about it except for the fact I couldn't get through the people. They were in my way. Um, this caused a kerfluffle. And what surprised me was that Ben Shapiro had lots of sound bites and video clips and tweets. How did you get the tweet of the young girl who tweeted about seeing you there and was just literally, she was deeply affected, almost scared that he was there and their people were there. And yet her account is private. So Ben, how'd you get a copy of her tweet? That was kind of interesting. So of course, he made a big deal about it on his show. It's then blasted out to all of the media, and the guys from Podcast Movement are dealing with the fallout from this. First of all, let me give you a little encouragement about this, okay, to my guys. The fact that he showed up, that's a win. You're so big and you're such a big player. He wants to find out what you're doing. He wants to see an event, a podcasting event that's successful and how it's run. Yeah. You know what? It's kind of interesting when the big dogs come to your yard and want to know what you're doing. Don't be swayed by that. Don't be swayed by that. And for those who are offended, listen, they're entering our space. They want to know what we say. And personally, I think that at a conference like this, if the organizers keep the playing field level, yeah, you come on. You want to have a conversation with us. You want to have a healthy dialogue about ideologies and ideas and stories. Let's do it. Let's do it. If you really want to understand why what we're doing is successful. So I can understand how some would be deeply affected. Again, when your story is of such a way and you use it in such a way that creates a deep effect on other people, that other effect can be fear. It can be upset. It can be harmful. So because I have a journalism background, there's a difference between and my husband Michael and I were talking about this last night. And so I told him I'm going to share that because as we both of us worked in radio and worked for a very large successful broadcasting company whose level of journalistic ethics was always high. There's a difference between a journalistic standard, which is a standard by which stories are told, and then there's poetic license. And poetic license is what a lot of artists and musicians and creators do by breaking those norms and those standards and experimenting with new forms, such as podcasting, of storytelling, right? So, how do you tell your story? Are you using journalistic standards? Well, let me share with you what those journalistic standards are. Because there's an organization, there's a society of professional journalists. There are standards put in place, laws put in place, rules put in place to protect and to ensure that the stories that are going out are truthful, are helpful, and are informative. So, the members of the Society of Professional Journalists believe that public enlightenment is the forerunner of justice and the foundation of democracy. Ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough. Accurate, fair, and thorough. An ethical journalist acts with integrity. There are four principles as the foundation of ethical journalism that is used by people in all media. So if you are on the radio, if you are podcasting, if you are sharing your story in print, there are certain ethical standards that journalists hold to so that the information that they put out enlightens their audience, enlightens the readers. So seek the truth and report it. Ethical journalism should be accurate and fair. Journalists should be honest and courageous in gathering, reporting, and interpreting information. You have to take responsibility for the accuracy of your work. Is it accurate? Provide a decent context for your audience. Don't misrepresent it. Don't oversimplify it. Don't over promote it, right? Provide context for your audience, for your readers, so that they understand what it is you're trying to tell them. Okay. As Dr. Sanjay Gupta said, they were trying to gather and distribute accurate information to the best of their knowledge that they had through their findings. Were they going to make mistakes? Absolutely. When was the last time you went through a pandemic? So for medical experts, they were, Dr. Sanjay Gupta said, because I'm a brain surgeon, I was fascinated and equally mortified by this virus's ability to affect the brain. He said, I'm a brain surgeon. I wanted to know how this virus was doing this because there, other viruses like the flu or stuff, they don't affect the brain unless you have a serious version of it or have some pre-existing condition that causes your brain to have problems, right? So identifying those sources are very important. Diligently seeking subjects that people want to know about. Don't stereotype. Just provide the news. And I think the challenge to the news stations these days are having to either, are they chasing ratings? Are they chasing money? Or are they truly trying to provide news? So there are news sources out there now through the form of podcasting that people have come to depend upon for accurate information. Minimize harm. That's the next pillar. Minimize harm. So if the content that you're providing is harming someone else, are you an ethical journalist? There are some people who say that the the content that Ben Shapiro shares, his podcast show, his interviews, everything he does when he speaks harms others. Is he harming others, or is it the actions of people who listen to his words that harm others, right? Sometimes the public does not need to have too much information because it could be harmful, because it could cause a panic. That's why sometimes journalists have to be very careful to minimize harm so that when there's things like tornadoes coming or a hurricane coming or um, fires or things, they need to evacuate people safely and get information out to them, but they don't want to harm them by causing a panic, right? Because we also know that when we send information out there, we send our stories out there, they're going to have an effect on our audience. So what is that effect going to be? Is it going to be to help them, to empower them, to encourage them, or is it going to be to embolden them so that they take actions and do things that they shouldn't be doing, right? So it's very Important. Act independently. Most journalists try to avoid conflicts of interest, real or perceived. Real or perceived. If they feel like they have a bias on a story, usually a lot of times they'll assign it to someone else. If you have a particular bias towards something, can you be objective in your viewpoint? I'm an editor. I've had to edit stories, and I've had to work on stories by people who I did not agree with their ideology. I was hired by the publishing house. I had to do the work. I did the work according to what I was asked to do, but did I agree with the book? Did I like having to work on that book? Not particularly, but it didn't affect my life because I wasn't paying for the project. Every person has the right in this country to share their stories, to share their content in the form that they deem without any backlash from our federal government, right? When it comes to harming others, if what they share, for example, Alex Jones, the InfoWars guy, sharing all of the misinformation and doing things to harm the parents of the Sandy Hook school shooting, um, he was taken to court and he was asked in court and shown evidence, and he even admitted, yes. Does he take poetic license with his stories? Do they take poetic license? So then are they seen as a source of truth of information, or are they entertainment? Sometimes the line gets blurred, and these days there is no line. People don't want to adhere to journalistic standards, but they want to just shoot their stuff out there into the world. That's why we have social media posts that go awry. That's why we have, and let me just say that the people who were dogging podcast movement on Twitter, each time and I don't really listen. Twitter, guys, oh my gosh, what a dumpster fire. I have Twitter. I'm not really active on it. I only use it when I have to reference articles or there's something that I have to reference, and the only way to get there is through Twitter. Sometimes I'll jump in and get into some conversations, but for the most part, my God, does not help me look good. But for the people that were dogging podcast movement, I would go look at the people who were commenting and they had like 22 followers. They didn't even have a picture in their banner of their Twitter account. A lot of times, guys, you don't even know that these people are real or are bot accounts sent in there to cause problems on a topic like this. Again, Dan and Jared, I love you guys. You hit the big time, man. The big dogs are wanting to play with you. Don't take that as a negative. Take that as a positive. This conference is going to be defined by the fact of the stand of what you will do from this moment forward. So see this as the next level, man. If you want to know how they feel, ask Mark Cuban, ask Sanjay Gupta, ask all the big name people that you had show up at your conference willing to sit down with people in conference sessions of like, oh, I don't know, 300 people and talk and really interact with them personally. Can't put a price tag on that. That was amazing. And so, how do we share our stories, right? We act independently. You want to make sure that when you're sharing your sources, they're coming from you. I tell my authors all the time, are you writing a fiction story? There are certain criteria in writing fantasy fiction that you satisfy, but you're building characters, right? You have great dialogue in the book that moves the story forward. There's tension in the story. Where's that conflict that comes up? How do you respond to that conflict in your story, right? So don't take handouts from people. They have to avoid conflicts of interest. So distinguish news from advertising and shun hybrids that blur the lines between the two. You can have sponsored content, but be careful that your content doesn't promote so as to exclude others, right? And then be accountable and transparent. If you're being an ethical storyteller, you are being accountable and you're being transparent. The guys of Podcast Movement um, got on Twitter mainly for the people who were attending the session and wanted to apologize. They did not know that he was going to show up. Daily Wire was sold a booth package only. They did, like I said, they did not have representation on any panels or any stages. For some people, their very presence there was concerning. But you know what, guys? Come on. We're playing in the big leagues. You're going to a conference, you're going to something like this. These are businesses and vendors who are all doing business. We do business with all kinds of people. You have the right to choose the kinds of people you want to do business with. Podcast Movement sold them a booth on a first time basis to try and see if they could come in probably to the conference and just be present. I think Ben Shapiro showing up was a surprise because I don't think they let the conference host know they were coming. And so if you're coming to a conference, if you don't want to stir up trouble, announce that you're going to be stopping by. If you don't have a badge, listen, everybody paid for a badge to come to that conference. Why should anybody allowed to walk into a conference without a badge? I guess I should just go hit up some conferences here in Dallas and walk in without a badge, see if I can make a presence, right? So there can be a lot said, a lot of speculation that we said on the intent of why. Now, Ben Shapiro is the founder, and this was a new thing for his company. Does he live here? No. Was he here on business doing other things, happened to be in town and wanted to check it out? I don't know. Um, I think the courtesy of letting the conference attenders know that you are showing up is ethical. That way there wouldn't be all this kerfluffle, right? That way staff could be, because it could have been one of the other sponsors that had an issue with it, right? We don't know. We just know that people thrive on drama. There's certain people who thrive on drama, and drama is great when it's a fictionalized story that's meant for entertainment. But if we're sharing real stories, if we're trying to do things and help others, let's hold to a code of ethics. Let's hold to some rules that help us tell our stories effectively. That's what I do as an editor. I help my authors understand there are certain guidelines we use when telling our stories. And when we do, they're our best stories that we put out there. And that's what you want to do, is put out your best stories. So if you want to learn more about podcasting as a way of telling your story, believe me, you'll want to come to this conference. It's the top conference in the country. There's over 200 workshops and sessions you can go to. Like I said, there's another aspect of the conference that they do called Podcast Evolutions. That happens in March of every year. If you're not able to go to the August conference, summer conference, there's one in March called Podcast Movement Evolutions. This is a more focused conference that deals with all the latest technology and trends pertaining to the industry. It's a little smaller. Podcast Movements averages about 3,000 attendees. So when I say this is an amazing conference that is so chock full of content with so many people from around the country and then even foreign countries that come in and send people, there was a whole podcasting track on podcasting in Africa. That has become a whole new thing. Podcasting in Mexico, podcasts that are now in other languages. The field is just ripe for storytelling, right? So, how do we do this? How do we do this with some ethical standards, some integrity? And here's why I think this is really important, because at the bottom of everything that I try to do, if you know me, you know I love coffee, you know I love God, and I love people when they don't piss me off. Piss me off, you'll find out a whole new side of me. But here's something that as a person of faith, that I used to even share with my students. I said, if your families are, people of faith, you understand the importance of how the Word of God is used as a tool to help us measure our life and give us some principles that we hold to if we're doing it correctly, right? I know who I think Jesus was based on what I read, and I don't need you to tell me what you think he did. And so I go into his word and I find things. So here was something that I used to share with my students. This is found in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15 through 17. And it's pretty clear here to me. I mean, I when I read these words, it's pretty clear here to me the kind of standard we want to hold ourselves to when it comes to sharing our stories and helping others share their stories. It says, be diligent to present yourself approved to God as a workman who does not need to be ashamed. Let's break that down. Be diligent to present yourself approved to God. There are other translations that say, study and show yourself approved. In other words, do the work and prove to others that you are a workman, or we could use a business person, a storyteller, a um, a person who does business with others, who does not need to be ashamed. You don't have to be ashamed of what you're doing. I'm here doing this show online. I'm an editor. Why do I do this? It's a means of me to connect with other people, to encourage them to share their stories. And I try to also show you that I'm credible because I do have a portfolio of work that shows that I've done this before. And I have a background and experience. I can help you with these things. I'm one of many. You don't have to work with me, but I'm one of many. But I love this part of the scripture. It says, be a workman who does not need to be ashamed, accurately handling the word of truth. Are you accurately handling the word of truth, or are you trying to put a spin on it so that it sounds better than what it is? That's poetic license. That's poetic license. But avoid worldly and empty chatter. Avoid worldly and empty chatter. What's empty chatter? A lot of stuff you hear on Twitter, social media, throwing their crap out there, not even thinking, having any kind of standards before you share content. Avoid it because it will lead to further ungodliness and their talk will spread like gangrene. I think I'll take a sip after that. So does the drama and all the empty chatter that ensued, does it spread like gangrene? And what's the result of that? Usually bad. That's why I say, no, no, no. You know what? You stay as far away from that as possible. You do the work, you show yourself approved, you show that you can correctly handle the word of truth. And I'm telling you, your story will get out there. Others may be threatened by it, others will be encouraged by it. Your job is not to figure out which area it falls on. Your job is to get your story out there. Do the work, show yourself approved, tell your story. Storytelling is one of the most powerful things that we have. If I share my story about overcoming breast cancer with other people who are other women who have been diagnosed with it, I can be very helpful sharing my story of how I got through that. I can help widows who have gone through losing their spouses because I have indeed experienced that. I've also been a storyteller and a content creator for quite a while. And so I'm able to help you share your story and share your content, tell your best story, and find an outlet for it. And maybe your outlet is podcasting. So if you've ever wanted to go to the conference, as soon as they drop the link for registration, I'll be sharing it, guys. You want to come to this conference. You want to come and, if nothing else, if you're curious about it or have ever thought about podcasting, do you have some favorite podcasts? Ooh, I am going to be sharing some podcasts. Guys, there was no way for me to even include it in this show. Some great content that I've come across, some great content creators that I've come across. If you really want to know about it, I'm putting together, I've been working on it for the last couple of days, but I've got to draft a newsletter that is going to go out with just a little recap of the conference and some of the new podcasts that I've come across that are fabulous. And so I'm going to be sharing those. So if you want to get that newsletter, if you want to find out more, or if you just want to follow me so that you can get my content, go right here to roneharden.com/contact. Drop me your email address. Let me know if you would like to join my book club. I have a book club. We are reading some fantastic books. We just finished this one. Let me show you. Just finished this one. And the bookstore called me and let me know that my hard copy of our next month's book is ready for pickup. But we read this one called The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Whoo! Mystery. Woman who was married to a guy who suddenly disappears and just leaves her a note with his daughter, says protect her. And she has to find out what happened to him. Where did he go? What was his life? Why was he, hiding? And why are they coming after his daughter? Ooh. So it was a great book. We enjoyed it. We are having our last discussion this coming Tuesday. We're going to be talking about that. But I'm super excited about our September book club pick because it's going to be a really good one. So again, if you want to be part of the book club, or especially if you want to get my newsletter and the content that I'm going to be sharing about podcasting, but here is our book club pick for September. It is called The Giver of Stars. It was one of Reese Witherspoon's book club picks a couple of years ago. I read it then. Really loved this because I've been kind of going through a theme in my show with my book club picks. But The Giver of Stars is a 2019 historical fiction novel by the author Jojo Mars and is about the pack horse librarians in a very remote area of Kentucky. This story is set in the Depression era and is a story of 5 extraordinary women and their journey through the mountains of Kentucky and beyond. So this is set during the Great Depression. This is a program that was launched by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt in getting books to people. And so this is the story of these 5 women who did this. The book has been picked up by Universal Pictures to have a movie adaptation. I'm telling you, if I love Reese Witherspoon for anything other than her performance in The Morning Show or all the movies she's made, the fact that she's gotten behind solid books with great characters, and her production company is helping in getting these produced into films. Again, guys, great stories that are told and shared in various formats. I can't get enough of it. And that's why I go to these kinds of conferences, because learning about podcasting is just another element that I can not only do for myself and kind of maybe retweak my show into a new format, but also help my clients understand that it can be an important part of their storytelling process. But we are going to be reading this book in September. Again, if you'd like to join the book club, you can. I'll also be sending out my newsletter about podcast movement and sharing all of the great content and things that I learned from there, because there's no way I can condense it down into a show. But I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for listening, for engaging in the comments, for those who have engaged in the comment section. I want to let you know that I appreciate you coming by, stopping by, giving me a listen. I would love to know your thoughts. If you were at the conference, please let me know. Share in the comments what your experience was. We had a great time. I can't wait to do it again. And I hope that you'll join me in a couple of weeks because, again, next weekend is Labor Day weekend, guys. I'm going out of town, seeing some family. I hope you're getting together with your family. There are great stories going on all the time. Vacations and holiday breaks are perfect settings for that. You may not be going away anywhere. You may just be ready to have a long holiday weekend, right? But can you believe next weekend we're already in September? Where has the summer gone? We're still technically in summer, but gosh, it's going to be September. So we would love to have you join the book club. Again, get on the newsletter so you can get all of my content I may not share on social media, but would love to share with you. And also, let me know your thoughts. Do you have a question about maybe how you can share your story better, how you can make your content stronger? Maybe you have a book. I've also been involved in writing curriculum and helping students learn. So you may have a course creation you want to do. You may have some things that you want to tweak for your team at work, right? Any of those kinds of things, ways to make your storytelling and your work get out there in the best possible form. So, whew, I'm still in conference mode, but I'm still trying to decompress. It was such an amazing week, and I hope that your week if it wasn't as intense as mine, I hope you'll take some time this weekend to relax. I plan on doing that and just enjoy with your family, with your friends, or maybe with a good book. Pick up a copy of our book club book. You'll be ahead of the game. And I hope to see you back here in a couple of weeks. I'll be back on, let's see, what is it? September 10th. I have a new series that I'm going to be launching for the month of September. I can't wait to share it with you. So I hope you'll join me in 2 weeks for the September Storytime series. And as always, you can always drop me a note in the comments. Let me know how you enjoyed the show. If you have a question, you can always send me a message through my social media platforms. Other than that, guys, have a fantastic weekend. Rock on. Share your story. Ah, not everyone's going to love you, but just know that I do. And I hope to see you back here next weekend for more from the editor's desk. Take care.